Being the first millionaire in your family is not about flashing money or proving people wrong. It's a responsibility that gets placed on your shoulders because you were built differently. Win. It's about breaking a pattern that's been running for generations. Poverty isn't always about income. Sometimes it's a mindset that gets passed down through fear, comfort, and survival thinking. When you're chosen to be first, you're chosen to interrupt that cycle. Win. You're not chasing wealth just for yourself. You're carrying the weight of everyone who came before you and everyone who will come after you. That kind of assignment demands more than desire. It demands transformation. God doesn't elevate people who are addicted to comfort. Comfort keeps you average. Comfort keeps you late. Comfort keeps you negotiating with discipline. Win. Preparation is what separates wishers from builders. While others are resting, you're refining. While others are waiting for motivation, you're showing up on principle. The truth is, you won't always feel inspired, but preparation doesn't wait for feelings. It's built in the dark when nobody is watching, when the results aren't visible yet. That's where capacity is formed. That's where trust is earned. And when you step into preparation, don't expect applause. Being first comes with isolation. Win. Your growth will make people uncomfortable because it reminds them of what they avoided. You'll be called obsessed, distant, or arrogant when all you're really doing is refusing to stay small. Even the people who love you may not understand you because you're moving toward a future they've never seen. That loneliness isn't rejection, it's separation. Win. You can't build a new legacy while clinging to old habits and familiar limitations. The blessing doesn't respond to wanting, it responds to management. Everyone wants abundance. Win, but very few manage their time, energy, focus, and emotions well. If you can't be trusted with a schedule, you won't be trusted with scale. If you waste hours, you'll mishandle opportunities. Win. Wealth is attracted to order. Discipline proves you're serious. Consistency proves you're reliable. Every day you show up when it's hard, you're proving you can handle more. Before money ever shows up in your hands, mastery has to show up in your habits. There will be a long season where it feels like nothing is happening. You'll be working without recognition. Win. Sacrificing without validation and building without guarantees. That season isn't punishment, it's training. Obscurity sharpens you. Silence strengthens you. Rejection teaches you endurance. Every closed door forces you to develop skill instead of entitlement. You're not buried in that season, you're planted. Growth is happening underground before it ever shows above the surface. If you quit too early, you interrupt the process that was shaping you for expansion. When wealth finally comes, it won't just test your bank account. It will test your character. Money amplifies who you already are. That's why integrity has to lead ambition. You're being watched in private long before you're celebrated in public. Win. How you treat people who can't benefit you matters. How you move when progress is slow matters. Every small decision is a test of readiness. Passing those tests quietly is what triggers acceleration later. Win. The real power of being first isn't personal comfort. It's generational impact. It's changing conversations at the dinner table. It's creating options where there used to be anxiety. Win. It's becoming proof that discipline works, sacrifice matters, and limits can be broken. One day, someone in your family will believe bigger because they watched you refuse to quit. When that's how legacies are built, not in loud moments, but in daily obedience to the work when quitting would have been easier. God doesn't choose people who are in love with comfort. When comfort keeps you settled, predictable, and average, it numbs urgency and convinces you that tomorrow is guaranteed. Preparation, on the other hand, requires sacrifice. When It demands that you wake up when you don't feel like it, that you stay disciplined when there's no immediate reward, and that you commit even when the outcome isn't clear. Comfort asks for ease. Preparation asks for effort. And God consistently entrusts greater responsibility to those who are willing to carry the weight of preparation long before the reward ever shows up. When discipline is the foundation of preparation, it's doing what needs to be done without needing to be reminded, motivated, or praised. Discipline is quiet. Nobody applauds it. When nobody celebrates the early mornings, the long nights, or the consistent routines that don't look impressive from the outside. But discipline compounds. When every small act of obedience to your responsibilities builds trust, both within yourself and with the opportunities that eventually come your way. Without discipline, talent fades, motivation dies, and potential stays trapped in intention. Consistency is what separates temporary effort from lasting progress. Anyone can work hard for a week. Anyone can feel inspired for a moment. But consistency requires identity. It means showing up when you're tired, when you're discouraged, and when the results are invisible. Growth doesn't respond to bursts of effort it responds to repetition. Every time you show up again, you're teaching yourself that quitting isn't an option. Over time, consistency rewires your mindset, strengthens your confidence, and creates momentum that comfort can never produce. Stewardship is the proof that you can be trusted. It's not about how much you have. It's about how well you manage what's already in your hands. Time, energy, skills, opportunities, and relationships are all forms of wealth. If you misuse them, neglect them, or take them for granted, you reveal unpreparedness. When God multiplies what is managed with care and intention, when you respect the small things, you demonstrate readiness for bigger things. Entitlement expects more without responsibility. Stewardship earns increase through accountability. Comfort creates excuses. It whispers that you deserve rest before the work is finished, that shortcuts are acceptable and that standards can be lowered when things get hard. Preparation rejects excuses. It understands that pressure is part of the process and that discomfort is often a sign of growth. Every time you choose discipline over ease, you strengthen your capacity to carry more. Preparation stretches you beyond convenience and builds resilience that comfort will never teach. There will be seasons when discipline feels unrewarded and consistency feels pointless. You'll question whether the effort is worth it, especially when others seem to be progressing faster with less sacrifice. But preparation isn't about comparison, it's about alignment. You're being shaped for what's ahead, not validated by what's around you. Every unseen effort is forming character, sharpening skill, and developing patience. Those internal qualities become the foundation that sustains success when external rewards finally arrive. Entitlement demands outcomes without process. It believes success should come easily, quickly, and on your terms. But real growth requires submission to structure, timing, and responsibility. Preparation humbles you. It teaches you to respect the process instead of rushing the result. When wealth comes without preparation, it destroys. When it comes through discipline, consistency, and stewardship, it sustains and multiplies. God entrusts more to those who prove they can handle pressure without losing integrity. Preparation creates people who are steady under stress, focused under distraction, and grounded under success. Comfort produces fragile confidence that collapses when challenged. That's why preparation is always chosen over ease. It forges strength, clarity, and reliability, the kind of foundation that can carry real responsibility without breaking. Being first comes with a cost that most people never talk about. It means walking a path that no one around you has walked before, and that alone creates distance. When you start thinking differently, moving differently, and demanding more from yourself. When the people closest to you may not recognize the version of you that's emerging, not because they don't love you, but because your growth challenges what feels familiar and safe to them. When being first means you no longer fit neatly into the patterns everyone else has accepted. Misunderstanding is part of the process. When your mindset shifts, your priorities change. When you stop laughing at the same jokes, wasting time on the same habits, and entertaining the same excuses. To others, that looks like arrogance, obsession, or unnecessary intensity. They may question why you're working so hard, why you're so focused, or why you can't just relax like everyone else. When what they don't see is the vision you're carrying or the responsibility you feel to become more. They judge the behavior without understanding the burden behind it. Loneliness often shows up quietly. When it's not always about being physically alone, it's about being mentally separated. You can be in the same room, the same house, even the same conversations, yet feel disconnected. Your thoughts are on growth, discipline, and long-term goals, while others are comfortable with short-term relief and routine. That mental gap creates isolation. When you realize that the journey ahead requires decisions and sacrifices that few people around you are willing to make, growth naturally separates you from familiar mindsets, especially within your own family. When family environments often reinforce inherited beliefs about money, success, risk, and limitation. When you start questioning those beliefs, it can feel like betrayal. You may hear comments rooted in fear, when caution, or past disappointment. They're not trying to hold you back intentionally. They're protecting you based on what they've known. But what protected them may limit you. When being first requires you to honor where you come from without being imprisoned by it. As you evolve, you'll notice subtle resistance. Invitations stop coming. Support becomes conditional. Conversations feel strained. People may remind you of who you used to be, hoping you'll shrink back into a version that feels familiar to them. That pressure can be confusing, especially when it comes from those whose approval once mattered most. You'll wrestle with guilt for changing and frustration for not being understood. This internal conflict is one of the hardest parts of growth. Loneliness in this season isn't a sign that you're wrong. It's a sign that you're early. When pioneers rarely have crowds cheering at the start. They have silence, they have doubt. They have moments where they question whether the separation is worth it. But separation is necessary for clarity. When you're no longer surrounded by constant noise and validation, you learn to hear your own convictions more clearly. Solitude strengthens resolve. Being misunderstood forces you to develop internal validation. You can't rely on external approval.